Hello, I'm Jordan, and welcome back to The Hidden Cup. Today we're discussing a topic that is incredibly exciting to me. Is the tarot alive? And I mentioned this before in my review of the book A Walk Through the Forest of Souls by Rachel Pollack. In that book, she introduces the idea of using the tarot for what she calls wisdom readings. And that is asking the deck a question about any of those deep, quasi-incomprehensible topics that have fascinated us for so long. What is God? What is the human soul? Where did the universe come from? And it occurred to me that we could use this same format to learn more about the tarot itself. She did ask the cards a few questions in that area in her book, but she did not put quite the fine point on it that I wanted to. And before we get into what the cards say when we ask that question, let's first discuss a little bit of what we might mean if we talk about the tarot being alive. There are a few different ways to conceptualize this, and I'm sure many more that I'm not thinking of myself, but I'm going to go through some of the basics. First, we have the perspective of Aleister Crowley, who believed that the tarot was a manifestation of spirit intelligences. And over the course of his career, he developed different ideas of what this might mean. Initially, he took it in a somewhat Jungian direction, viewing the cards as a way of interfacing with the human subconscious and externalizing certain ideas and concepts that the conscious mind was unaware of. As Crowley progressed in his studies and went deeper into his occult explorations, he ended up concluding that the tarot actually represented what he called a praeter-human intelligence. And what these are higher intelligences. They know more than we do, but they exist on a somewhat different plane of reality, so we don't quite interact with them in the same way that we do conventional intelligences. He described them as akin to deep-sea fish, just as real as we are, but operating on a different level. And he believed that the tarot allowed us to tap into one of those spirits, which he believed to be a manifestation of Hermes or Mercury. Hermes, of course, is the Greek god that is equated with the Egyptian god Thoth, who is so heavily associated with the tarot, and that Crowley named his Book of Thoth tarot deck after. There are other ways of looking at this idea, though. We could see the tarot as an interface for the collective unconsciousness of the human beings. Sort of like an operating system, a way of accessing concepts and ideas that are in that deep well of human understanding, but not readily available to the conscious self. We could also view the tarot as what they call an egregore. And an egregore is basically a created god, an entity that exists independently now, but originally did not exist. And it came into being as a result of the, we'll say, accrued belief of human beings over the course of a period of time. Some people believe that all religious deities, from Vishnu to Jesus, are functionally egregores, where they are basically made out of the fundamental divine substance, but shaped by the belief of human beings. But over time, that belief shapes them into something solid, something that has a personality and a presence of itself, that then takes on an independent existence and can answer prayers and perform miracles. However, whatever it was created to do, whatever parameters were projected onto that entity by those who believed in it, it takes on those characteristics. So from this perspective, we could see the tarot as an entity that has been created over time by all of the practitioners who believed in it, that has enabled it to become progressively more and more effective and powerful as the decks have been developed, as the user base has grown, and as people past, present, and perhaps even future have contributed their own energy and their belief to that system. A similar but not quite identical idea is the idea of a Gestalt consciousness. And in this framework, we could regard the tarot as existing as sort of a collectivized will of all tarot practitioners, past, present, and future. And the entity would then draw on the collective knowledge, the collective power, be fueled by everyone who engages with it over time, but it would have an existence that is essentially greater than the sum of its parts and has its own personality that has accrued over time as the summation of all of those independent contributions from tarot practitioners. So those are just a few different ways of looking at the idea of what it might mean if the tarot was alive. But since the tarot is what it is, we don't have to just speculate. We can ask the cards. So I decided to do just that. And a few weeks ago, I set out my mat and I lit my incense and my candle, and I asked the Pamela Colman Smith tarot deck, is the question alive? And I'll show you the card that I drew because, as always, the tarot is uncanny in its answers. This is the Queen of Pentacles. And as you can see, this is a woman who is surrounded by life. She sits on her throne, she herself, a living person, crowned by an arch of plants and flowers, sitting out in nature, among the grass, among the leaves. And here in the bottom corner, we even see a rabbit. Now, there's a lot of things that I took away from this. First of all, it seems like a resounding yes. The tarot is alive. In fact, the tarot is very alive. The tarot is connected to that web of life in a fundamental way. But we can see a few more specific things. First, we have here in the bottom corner the image of the rabbit. And this has a number of associations. First, rapidness and jumping. And I see that as a sense that the tarot does very quickly respond with a very warm and soft energy. Rabbits are also associated very heavily with procreation and reproduction. And I also see this as an indication of the proliferation of tarot decks over the many centuries that the tarot has existed as a system. It is endlessly reproducible, but every single one is still part of that lineage, part of that web of life, and tied into that family of tarot. We can also look at the woman herself. First of all, she is a person. And I do feel like it's a very clear answer here that not only is the tarot alive, the tarot is a person. It has a personality, it has a presence, and it has a certain warmth to it. And the Queen of Pentacles does have a number of very specific associations that I think are quite relevant here. Kindness, warmth, openness, practicality, wisdom. And I jotted down a few others just because I wanted to make sure not to forget some of the relevant ones. She's nurturing. She's warm and inviting. She offers abundance. She's generous and loyal. And she is kind and welcoming. And this has always been my experience with the tarot. It is very much an open door to the heart of understanding. The tarot does not require anything from us other than that we approach it seriously and with openness. And if we do that, she will reward us. If you'll notice, she's holding in her lap a pentacle, which is, of course, the suit that this card comes from, but it's also a powerful occult symbol. And she's gazing at it warmly as if reflecting on its mysteries. And again, I see the tarot in this image as well. If you look closely at the throne that she sits on, it's carved with numerous symbols of animals and other with occult associations. So again, we're bringing in the symbolism of the tarot. And I looked through the deck, and honestly, I do not see a better, more clear and unequivocal expression of the life force of the tarot than this card. The only other card that seems to have this degree of nature with an individual in it is the Empress. But even in that case, first of all, the Empress is already a very powerful existing archetype in that she represents Mother Nature, the collectivized web of life. It's a different role than the tarot. And second of all, she does not sit on a throne of symbols. She does not hold the pentacle in her hand. She does not have that same direct association with the type of occult work that we're doing here with the tarot. So I really do feel like this is the strongest and most unequivocal yes, the tarot is alive. She is a person, and she cares about us. That is the answer that I received from this card and when I asked that question. And it really does match my own experience with the tarot as well. So, what do we do with this? For me, I see it as an invitation to approach the tarot not just as a teacher, but as a friend. The tarot is a person who is warm and inviting. The tarot is a part of the web of life, just like us. And regardless of how it came to exist as an entity, whether as something that we created through our own belief, whether as a new expression of an old spiritual entity like Hermes, Thoth, or Mercury, or as something else, as I discussed in another video, perhaps we can view the tarot as analogous to the pre-created Word of God, that fundamental principle of archetypal existence that the reality is built around. Perhaps the tarot is a personification of that sort of underlying universal force, that logos principle. But in any case, regardless of how we conceptualize what it means for the tarot to be alive, I do firmly believe that the tarot is alive, that it exists as a person, that it offers us warmth and kindness and instruction and wisdom. And I found that when I interact with it on that level, person to person, as a friend consulting with a trusted friend, mentor, advisor, it opens up even more. And you can have those sort of conversations that you would have with a wise friend. You can ask any question you want to in a way that is casual. You don't have to, take off your shoes, wash your hands, put on your ceremonial attire, make sure that you're pure before approaching this entity. The entity of the tarot will accept you as you are, where you are. And the amount of openness, the amount of respect you bring, that will be returned to you. Whatever you give the tarot, you get back exponentially. So I hope you've learned something from this video. I would be curious if any other practitioners have asked similar questions to their deck and what answers you've received if you've done so. And also, if you have any other ways of conceptualizing what it might mean for the tarot to be alive, I would be curious to hear those as well, because there's so many different ways to look at this. And as an entity, clearly the tarot does exist on a plane that is somewhat different, perhaps transcendent of the physical plane. So however we conceptualize it, we're distilling a concept that does not quite fully fit into a human brain. So all ways of looking at this are going to be incomplete and partial. So I think any additional perspectives that can be offered on it would round out the idea. It's like the elephant theory with God. Some may touch the trunk, some may touch a leg or a tail or the side, but we're all touching the same thing. And when we interact with the tarot, we are all interacting with the same entity, perhaps in different ways, perhaps different flavors of that, perhaps slightly different personality overlays of the same underlying force, depending on what deck we're using. But the fact remains that the tarot is a person. The tarot is our friend, and the tarot can teach us incredible things if we open ourselves up to its secrets. I hope you've learned something from this video, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. I'll post another video soon, and we'll see how our journey continues on together. Thank you.